Hello and welcome back to the Culture Creators Podcast. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Doug Bester. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ben.
So you are the CEO of Sentient.
Yep.
For the listener, could you please begin to place yourself by giving us an idea of your background and how you come to be sitting?
Sure.
Today?
I'm an engineer. Spend most of my life in process control, and a while ago I was actually doing a control system for Georgia Power in Atlanta. And control systems use mimic pages, which is circles representing a pump. But at night I was playing Counter-Strike with one of my sons who I was having difficulty connecting with. And I sort of realized that there was a big gap between the immersive and the engaged and the realism of gaming technology compared to what we did in the resource sector in terms of control and operations. So I started sort of wondering if there was a way I could create an entity that used gaming technology and gaming talent, which is not very well leveraged in Australia because there's cheaper places and more fancy places to do this technology in, but we have a lot of very good talent here. And could I create an entity where there was it was fun to be in, because I was sick and tired of working in engineering projects that were all driven on time, money, and then the project's finished, get rid of everyone, and then and it was just a very stressful and a horrid environment to work and go to work in. And I wanted to create somewhere where people enjoyed coming to work. I mean, yes, we all have bad days, but the premise is that it's really good if you can get people to enjoy what they're doing. And could I use gaming technology in the resource sector? And so since that, we've grown to 40 something people, and and have sort of established ourselves as fairly key in that technology area in the industry.
Superb. So already you have delineated between the stressful environment of engineering and making a fun environment here. So to what degree for you is culture linked to the performance of an organisation?
I think it was quite nice to get a lot of learning in a way as to how not to do it in some ways. So a lot of the experience I had in management consulting and sort of business, how to run businesses, I could see that it didn't work for me. I'm not saying it was wrong, but it was certainly wrong for what I wanted to create. I wanted to create something that had a long-term vision and wasn't a short, how can we make as much money out of this project as we possibly could.
Right.
And it was quite interesting for me because a lot of the how you did things was I didn't agree with. So for example, the area that I came from, and I hit the workforce in the 80s, so it's going back a while. It was all about money. You if you wanted somebody, you just paid them more money and you worked them harder. That was the very simple equation.
Worked them like a mule.
Yep, that's it, exactly. And you tried to extract the most. And it was actually quite difficult for me to try and shift out of that, because when you've done that for so long, you can create. It's powerful. Yeah, it's really powerful. But if you can get it right, if you can get a workforce motivated on vision rather than money, it's so much better. It really is. I mean, it's not just I'm doing this to be. A nice guy or anthropological or whatever philanthropic, I think, or whatever. It actually works. Like diversity, I realized way back before gender diversity was cool or was essential or whatever you want to call it. That I think we had 5 young 20s male testosterone-filled developers. And it just wasn't working. It was just...
Why was that?
Because I think they were all so competitive and they were all so, in a way, they were quite angry. The conversations they would have, the path to anger was quite quick.
Yep.
Anyway, we...
Sort of bickering.
Yeah, and sort of one-upmanship and all that. This, yeah. And then eventually I sort of thought, well, I don't know what to do, but let's see if bringing in, I had 3 sisters, and I've always known that women seem to be better at this game than men are in terms of that.
What's this game?
Well, the game is in men. One of the ways you can look at the game is competition.
Yes.
So I am very competitive.
Yes.
And I take it to a way that even if I know it's destructive, I can't stop myself doing it. Okay, that's a good example. Women tend to be able to even laugh at you and say, well, you're just being ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then you realize, oh, okay, yeah, they have the ability to deflate, to even, and to make, to shift from a me to an us, I think, far more effectively than
more collaborative.
More collaborative. So we went out and found, in fact, we interviewed somebody in Canberra, and literally in 15 minutes said, yeah, we'll fly you over, please come. And she walked in and the place changed. So for me, it was quite clear that any diversity you have, it's not just gender, it's anything, any diversity you can get in a high performing team, the team works better. It's not easier sometimes because you have to have a lot more conversations than you will. If I employed 40 Douglases, we wouldn't have to talk because we all would be able to know exactly what we were doing, and we'd probably be doing the wrong thing. But the minute you get in diversity, then someone says, well, actually, I don't agree with that. And then you have to have a conversation about what it is. So it's not more simple. Yes?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So there's that sort of, if everyone was the same, I suppose mentally you think it would be quicker and more efficient. But then we wouldn't have this creativity.
That's it. So for me, in technology now and the way things are moving so quickly, we have to be creative. We can't create a product and live on it for the next 20 years, which we could back in the 80s.
Yes.
So things change fast, okay? That's it. I think that's almost a fact. So you have to create a team that can think on its feet and is much more creative than what I was brought up with. When I was brought up, this is the way you did a project and you did it like that.
Yeah.
This changing.
Very
staid, waterfall, that's what you did, that was the whole deal. Now it's different. Now there are things where you fail, In our day you didn't fail, ever.
Yes.
That was not a good move. Normally, but that was on your way out of the door. Whereas here, we actually encourage people to fail. If you're not failing, you're not actually pushing, you're not trying, because the changes are coming and we have to be. And to do that change, a diverse team that is not thinking the same, and someone's going, but hey, what about this? In my opinion, is essential to survival.
You mentioned there that there's a lot more conversations.
Yes.
How did you find the transition from this, probably what I'm going to assume, sort of hierarchical engineering, this is how we do, to that more, well, we need to have a yarn about this for a period of time and then something will emerge?
Very difficult because in some ways it's inefficient. It's much better if someone walks in and says, right, today we're going to do this, and everybody runs off and does it. Yeah. But I think we found that, in fact, no, definitely, there's no question to this, is if everyone has a say, and I know this is, it's easy to say these things, but it's very hard to do them in practice. Because one of the issues that I have is if everyone has a say, you have to say, okay, we'll listen to what you say, Bryn, but it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to do it. And if you do that too often, Bryn eventually gets to the point and says, well, why am I having a say? Because no one listens to me anyway. So and when you're dealing with,
you get met by the wall of silence.
So it's not simple. Also, there are a lot of introverts. We generally tend to have introverts in the company. They're not good at, and I take up a lot of oxygen because I talk a lot. So it's getting me to shut up, and sometimes to get out of the room is a much better way of getting that wheel to spin.
Yes. How do you balance what you've referred to as sort of the inefficiency of yarning and including people against performance, profit? And I suppose there's another part to this as well, when you do have egos that emerge.
Yeah, egos are tough. What we try and do with profit is I try and lift the profit conversation up. So if there's a project that's not going well, that's okay, as long as there's enough projects that are going well to pay the bills every month, which is a big shift from the, you know what I mean? So you're looking at the company more holistically, profit-wise, and not trying to get involved in like, you know, why is your project doing so badly? It's more, it's fine. And actually, it also helps that if you're not driven by shareholders who want to make a return on investment, your expectations become a lot more easier to deal with than that. So the profit size, that's how we do that. As we try and not have a.
So it's not squeezing every last drop of profit out of every single engagement. No. It's taking a more holistic. Where is the whole company going forward?
Most important thing is to get the next project, not to make money on the project.
Yes.
So we build relationships with the large companies here. We will not survive if we make a really good profit on the first one and never work with that company again. We will survive even if we lose on the first one, but then we get continual work, and then we can get better and build a trusted relationship. That's our model. So that's how we handle that side.
Yes.
Egos are much more difficult because, especially as you grow, everyone says, "Oh, I need a system, and I need a procedure, or I need a document that defines." And as soon as you do that, you're cutting down on creativity, because now there's a process you have to follow. So you can't leave the process and say, "Oh, well, what do we do about this?" Because that's not in the process. And the egos are, and I mean it's always interesting for me because I've probably got the biggest ego, being the founder. So most of the handling egos is just to watch what I'm doing and try and temper that. It's fine. That it's not the team or the company egos are much better than mine to deal with in that. So it's more being aware of your own ego helps you handle everyone else's in a way.
To what degree is, as the founder, managing the culture a specific task or a thing that you do while you're doing what you do? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there's two answer in two ways. So I think where I can bring a lot of value to the organization is in my general attitude and mindset. So if I arrive at the office and I'm clearly happy to be here, and I'm saying to somebody, "Man, that was an amazing job you did on that last project, and that was good," there's a sort of an energy or something like that that I can bring in on that level. If you step down into the more of the weeds of the culture, then it's not, my role becomes a bit more murky, because as the founder, if I can say something as a joke or an offhand comment, it can have quite damaging or toxic implications into the organization.
Right.
And sometimes people find it much harder to say to me, "Well, actually, I think you're wrong," because they're nervous of that. So no matter how you try and build that up, there's always a layer when you are the person that has controlled it. So I find it's best if I get out of it. So you create teams. I find teams work really well. So it's not so much individuals, and the teams have quite a lot of clarity over what their role is in the culture, and they handle that. And I try. I'm not saying I always succeed. I try and be more of an observer to that than an active participant. It's not simple or easy to do that, I find. So,
how would you explain culture and how it works?
I think for me, culture can. It's very. If you can create if you can create an office where people enjoy going to work, you've nailed it. That's it. So if you can create a place where someone's not thinking, "Oh, it's Monday morning, I don't want to go to work," then you're failing.
What are the components that sit under that? Because on one level, it's very easy to say that. Right? Oh yeah, let's create a place where everybody loves coming to work and nobody wakes up with Monday morning dread and stuff like that. Awesome. That's where we want to go. But how do we do it? I mean, one of the lines of inquiry of this podcast is, what defines a positive culture and what defines a toxic culture, so that we as active participants in culture, whether it's in our family, our community, our work, and wider than that, can now begin to see what's going on rather than just be left to be sort of swayed around.
Yeah, so what we do, or what I do, or whatever, is there's that, I can't even remember his name, but he did a fantastic thing on, and I know a lot more of the science of this than I do, is the autonomy, vision and mastery. Those three things are critical to getting people to want to come to work. You have to give them autonomy, which if you're an engineer like me is difficult, because I want to tell you what to do. Mastery is no problem, and they are amazing. It's the gaming and the technical, the technical people, the technical stack we're dealing with is just awesome. When you look at the way it changes, with VR and AR and the new technologies that are coming out, that's actually simple. So what's it? And vision is really difficult. I find vision hard because I think it's things change so fast. I mean, like if you go to 2019 before COVID, and I could have had the most amazing vision, but the chances are it wouldn't have meant anything in during those years. So vision is trickier. So what we try and do with vision is sort of say, if you join us, is to sort of say, okay, what do you want to do when you leave?
Right.
And if an artist said, well, I'd like to go and work for a game company with characters, for example, we say, okay, cool. We're going to try and make sure that any character art that comes up, you get to do.
Yes.
And that's a way of getting that vision one, where now people are being trained into things where they have a long-term reason for doing it. And that actually works really well. Because if you find out what people want to do when they leave Sentient, and you make sure that happens, if you can give them enough tools and work environment to do that, they've got a much higher chance of staying. I know it sounds weird. Than if you say, longer. That's right, staying for longer. We've passed the age, although we do have some. We look at 5 years. If we can get an employee to stay for 5 years, that's great. And if they can stay for longer, awesome. But 5 years is pretty cool. So that's and then the other one is. So those three things. The other one is everyone has a voice, but that is tricky, as I said earlier, where everyone has a voice, but then I can feel in those everyone has a voice, open space, whatever you want to call them, all hands meetings. You can almost see people saying, I'm not going to say this because I know that the leadership group's going to do whatever they want, and so that's more hard. And the last one, which is probably sort of related, is the leadership, me and everyone, and it has to start with me. You have to have authentic care for your people. Right. Now, the word authentic for me is really interesting because, of course, we care about our people. They are generating money. But there's a big difference between caring about your care and actual authentic care. And it's hard because there's I find, for me personally, there's a certain number of people that it's very easy to have authentic care about. But there's always a couple that are, and those are really difficult. And people know, they know if I really am. They feel it. And if someone says, I've got an issue at home, and I can literally say to them, okay, you need to go home and sort that issue out, rather than, okay, so when can you be back? Just that. And that's the difference between having authentic care about somebody's mental health and I need you to do this project. How can I get you back on deck as quickly as you can? And if you have authentic care, it is so much more powerful than productivity care. So that's if you want to look at, those are the 5 things.
It's nice there that you've identified the mental and emotional health of somebody and that authentic care, and then linking it to performance, which then links to the
greater being. And it's I think
it's probably very different for your engineering.
Yes, and I think it's interesting because when I entered the workforce, I think we were just as mentally unstable. We just shut up about it and we bottled it up. We didn't. I'm not saying we were any stronger than but this current generation, I find a lot of our employees are anxious, and they'll say they're anxious, and it's much better because they are communicating it. And I think people my age can quite often think, stop being such a drama queen, come on, let's get the work done. But actually, I'm sure we were exactly the same. We just didn't have any way of communicating that or saying that. So I think actually it's quite a resilient group, even though when you look at it, it's like, whoa, there's all these conversations about, these really sort of like subjects and topics that I would never have spoken about when I was in my 20s. But it's great that they can actually have that.
And did that bottling up back in the day, did that actually serve us?
No. And not at all. I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I'm an engineer, but I think if you look at the production, I would much rather have an anxious person that is honest about their mental state than somebody who's like, I'm fine, and you never know what's going on, and then you get the like what happened. Where you go through these massive transitions, where you suddenly think I can't do this any longer, and then you suddenly disappear, or where
implode.
This is implode, which is and also I don't think that I'll just sort of say when I was in my 20s and the current workforce we have now is that they didn't care about our mental state. They really didn't. I don't think they really cared about them. There was you're doing a job. And I think that's short-sighted. I think if you can care, and if you can get people to be more open about what's going on in their lives, we all have things what's going on in our lives outside work. Correct. And if you can, I don't want to know that the minute details, but if you've got a problem and you can say, hey, look, I've got an issue I need to deal with, and you know that's fine. You can go and deal with that problem, and then come back to work. I think you'll end up with a better, stronger, more resilient workforce than one where you're getting pushed. And otherwise, I'll fire you. That was always.
And they're more likely to stay for that 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. As I talk to you, Doug, there's this fantastic sense of both a connection to the actual people that are here, as opposed to the version of people that we would like them to be within the confines of a traditional organisation. But there's also this fantastic sense of you being connected to timescales as well, in the holistic view of the company and profits as opposed to the individual. But then the fact that you want clients to keep coming back, so it's not just about today, but there's an actual journey through time in there.
Yeah, I think it's important, and I think that so I really try and make leadership decisions 50 years, mainly because I know I won't be here. So one of the problems when you make decisions on 3 months or 6 months or something like that, you're going to be there, so you think in a certain way, which means you'll always be here. Whereas if you make decisions or you think about strategy that's 50 years ahead, it's ridiculous.
So when you've left,
yes.
Do you find the culture of Sentient comes back and influences you?
I've learned so much about culture from trying things, and if you can create an environment where people do have a level of trust. I'm not perfect in any way, shape. I'm not saying that we've nailed all the thing at all, but if you are open to that, and also we had 4 kids, and they were my children were very good at sort of saying you middle-aged white guys have got a problem, you really have, and when you're told that enough times by enough people, you sort of start thinking, well, maybe there's something, maybe we can do things slightly better than what we've done before. But I have learned more from, I'm sure everyone does, if you can give creative people a space where they are happy to create, they can do amazing things.
Do you find yourself doing what you do here in terms of creating the space and culture? Do you find yourself doing that in other aspects of your life separate to work as well? From what you've
probably not as well as I think I'm probably more effective at that conversation here, and I think than I am outside it. I think that there's in a way, I think it comes down to purpose. If you want to look at that, the purpose of this company is quite clear to me. The purpose outside it is a little bit more difficult with family and friends. It gets a bit more murky in terms of that. So it's not as simple. And also, I'm not the founder outside it. So
no. I suppose not.
I'm much more more
family. You're the co-founder.
At best, yeah.
There you go. One of the sort of closing questions I like to ask people is, what's the one thing about culture that we are not talking about that we should be talking about?
Well, okay. Can I clarify the question? Are you talking about Sentient, or are you talking about West Australia, or are you talking about the globe? Which one? Which framework would you like to be?
Do you want to tackle all three?
I don't know if I can.
Or do you want to tackle two of them?
I can certainly tackle Sentient. So the
Do you want to go as far as Western Australia as well?
Yeah, we can try that.
Yeah, let's go.
So well, I can talk about the industries I work in. The Sentient one is allowing people to be who they are. Absolutely, that is, and that's not simple, because, you know, my daughter has this lovely thing. She works in a hospital. She puts on her work face. I don't really want you to put on your work face when you come to Sentient. I mean, yeah, there's going to be times when you're dealing with customers and when you work, but it'd be nice to bring yourself to work. So that's bringing that and knowing that you'll be safe and allowing you to flourish, let's say.
Yes.
In Sentient. So that's quite a simple one in the Sentient one. Enabling people to flourish is a good way of putting it there. In Western Australia and the resource sector, it's just about safety. I just cannot believe that we look at, like, how can we get the current thing of, like, how can we get girls into the resource sector? Well, it's simple, make it a safe workplace. They don't have it. It's not. I don't think that if you're a girl and you're going into a mine site or onto an oil and gas platform, it's not a safe place to be mentally in my opinion. So that's quite a simple one. Just make it a place where it's safe to go to. I mean, I know people in the industry who are my age who are actively encouraging their daughters not to go into the resource sector. That says it all. So that's, we, forget about STEM and talking to schools and stuff like that. Make your workplace safe. Literally, where people can bring themselves and not be.
We're not talking about physical injury here, really, are we?
No, but I think there's a lot of mental. The mental conversations that happen are just not acceptable. They're just like, stop it.
It's
just like, and then this thing.
Confronting.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, I'm just joking. Like, no,
You're not.
that's not the point. The point is you have to bring something where everyone is safe to come and do their job. So that is globally I can't do. I don't know enough about the global workforce, but certainly in West Australia, I think that would be fantastic for the WA community if the resource sector sort of is quite a big engine. If we could create an environment where everyone felt absolutely happy to come to work and safe, that would be a big step. And then you can worry about doing all the STEM stuff and talking to schools and that sort of stuff. But until you create an environment where that is non-negotiable, let's say, I think that would be the best thing to do in the culture. I don't know if that's culture. Yeah, it would be culture. Yeah.
That's very, very interesting. And imagine what productivity and creativity would be like. Doug, it's been great chatting today.
I think it's been.
Is there anything that's come up for you that's made you think, as a result of this conversation?
No, the only thing that I suppose is that this is a very personal, sentient conversation. I don't know if you can take what we do here and drop it into any organisation. I don't know. I don't. So that's the only thing that does worry me.
My challenge to that is: do you employ people to do stuff?
Yeah, we do.
No,
yep.
Anybody who's listening to this, do you employ people to do stuff?
Yep.
If the answer is yes, then I think there's a lot.
Yeah. Okay, there is it. I'm just. I suppose it's like somebody was saying to me the other day, how did you get so many tier 1 customers? It's like, well, when I was getting tier 1 customers, I was going back to like 2008, 2009. It's quite different then to what it is now. So I can tell you what I did, but I'm not sure whether in today's market, if you're going to run up and down the terrace and do what I did, whether you'd have the same success or that we had, because things change. So and I think that's it. I think probably the only thing I want to add is that it changes all the time. So and that was a big problem for me with culture, because as an engineer I wanted to fix it. What can I do to fix it? Well, you're never going to fix it. It's just something, it's a conversation you have all the time, and you will make mistakes, and you need to admit when you've made them and be open to other ideas. So that's probably mine.
It's more dynamic.
Absolutely. Very dynamic.
Dynamic and non-stop.
Non-stop, yeah.
Doug, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.